So no. And there we are. Hi, everyone. It's Servithkin from Ansteorra, and I'm here with His Royal Majesty Jason of Ansteorra. Thank you for participating tonight. I'm so glad that you could take some time out and do this and share your journey with us.
Well, thanks for letting me talk on your internet. So I hope I don't mess it up too bad.
I don't think you're going to mess it up at all. So I usually start these with sort of your origin story, like how you found the SCA and where and when. So if you want to start with your origin story, that would be great.
You got it. Okay, so one of my friends, Trey, he was living around the corner from where we were working at in Austin, Texas. And we played a lot of video games and hung out together and things like that. And so he wanted to show us his hobby, but he didn't want to tell us about it because he thought we'd think he's a nerd. And so he he convinces us to go to this park in Rockdale, Texas, which is out of the way of Austin, Texas. And we're walking around the park talking, and he points out and he's like, "Hey, look at those guys over there." And there was some old guys fighting in pajamas and armor, but no garb. They just had like sweatpants on and armor, and they were just training in the park. And we thought it was the silliest thing we ever saw in our lives. So we might have made fun of him a little bit. Well, he takes us over there. They make fun of us a little bit. And after he introduces us, they convince me to put on armor. And at this time, I'm very competitive in different sports and martial arts and things. And I think I'm a tough guy. Apparently I wasn't, because this old man beat me up super duper bad. Like it wasn't even funny. I thought I was athletic or something. And this Sir Randall de Krieger of Ansteorra, he gave me the beating of my life. Well, after that, I got my ego hurt. And so I had to try it again and again and again. And I think I lost about 1 million fights, like every one of my fights for the first like year of attempting this game. And just got beat up every day. But I think the whipping is what kept me going. I really couldn't handle it with my pride. And so finally, I moved up north to Oklahoma City area, Moore, Oklahoma. And then I actually figured out what the SCA was, because until that point, I had just done backyard style fighter practices.
Okay.
And I didn't know much of anything. Sir Randall actually took me to one Gulf War, but we showed up on a Wednesday. We only did 3 battles in a row and did nothing else at Gulf War, and then took us home. So at this point, I had no idea about awards or royalty or anything but getting hit with rattan. And once again at Gulf War, I just got killed like, I don't know, 1,000 times in a row in every melee. And so I still didn't know anything about it. Well, I moved up to the north in Ansteorra, and finally I started learning about the game. The guys up here told me that I could not fight with the gear. When I first started, I was told you had to use the set shield, this giant 2x3 rectangle Ansteorran monstrosity. You had to stand a certain way and move a certain way. And so I got up north, and they were like, "No, dude, you can do whatever you want." And so I threw that away immediately and started fighting with everything else. But no, some old man beat me up real bad and hurt my pride, so now I play the SCA.
What were the martial arts and the sports you were doing before you found the SCA?
All of them. So I've done a little bit of everything. And I was actually doing MMA when I joined the SCA. And we just decided, me and my wife decided to have babies. And we had just got married and decided we were going to have babies. And when she got pregnant with my first daughter, she decided that life wasn't for us. It was a violent, not the best life. And so we got out of it and started, SCA became my only martial art at that point. So, okay. But I've done boxing and kickboxing and all the different grapplings that you could do. I just didn't take Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu until I was out of high school. And that's what kind of got me into the MMA fighting, because you could wrestle all day, but you get in the ring with someone who knows how to grapple and you lose all your fights. So I had to start doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then I took boxing at like when I was younger, and then Taekwondo in middle school, and fencing and kickboxing and wrestling in high school, and just on from there.
So once you discovered that you didn't have to fight with one of those huge shields, what did you bring over from your martial arts background to your fighting?
So like when I was fighting with the big shield, I felt like I was using none of it. Like I would stand real still, I'd have a tight defense, and if I ran away, it was in a straight line. It's closer to strip fencing than anything else. But when I switched over to a small shield, I gained footwork again. And so my natural range control that I learned in martial arts directly translated to the SCA. I had to learn how to step so I could still throw shots and add power with a sword, but the range control, staying like either out of my opponent's range or keeping me in their range with them not being in my or not being able to hit me, like all of that started working together pretty well with my fighting.
Cool. So did you squire to someone?
Yeah, so so Sir Morgan Black Dragon was my knight, is my knight. He's the best. He was a squire when I decided he was going to be my knight. Another knight put me on a quest to understand what the knight squire relationship was, and I had to go fight a bunch of knights and ask a bunch of questions, write everything down, and bring it back. And then when I finished my quest, I was allowed to squire, but I had already chosen the person I wanted to squire to, and he was still several months from being knighted. It was at the time Centurion Morgan Black Dragon. He was pretty much everything I wanted out of a knight. And when I finally squired to him, it was for everything but fighting. I didn't need help on the fighting path. That hit the ground running when it came to fighting. I mean, it was, I think, a little over 4 years from my AOA to knighthood, and then only a couple years till I got my first crown. I mean, it was a real fast path. But I was the worst at everything else. I looked like a hobo. I talked bad. I didn't know any of the award structure. It was the worst. And so he made me eat with silverware and wear clothes and help people and do all the things you're supposed to do in the game besides hit people with a stick. Great night.
And did you notice that about him before you asked to be his squire? I'm assuming you asked.
Yeah, I begged him. He told me I had to wait a bunch of months before he'd allow me to squire to him, but he would help me in the process. And so we did hang out a bunch and he helped me a bunch. But he was just as silly and drunken and fighty as I was, but he was able to turn on his courtly graces and act the part and dress the part. And he had my same mindset. When I did something wrong, he was willing to yell at me or hit me with a stick or whatever to fix my bad habit. And so he was on me all the time when I made mistakes, which was pretty great. Yeah. But yeah, he had the courtly graces in spades that I didn't have at all. But he also had my same personality when it came to drinking and fighting and that kind of thing.
Having fun.
Yes.
Yeah. So tell me how you hooked up with this other knight that put you on a quest, because I think that's interesting.
Sir Owen Apathan. He was the dominant fighter in our area when I moved up north. Him and Duke John Paul were pretty much the best in the northern region of Ansteorra, which we're split in 3 regions because our kingdom's kind of spread out and big. But in all the north, Owen and JP were our best fighters, but Owen was in my area. So from the first time I went to this practice, it was him beating me up. And I was one of the few people that when he told me, try to teach me something, I was willing to listen. And so he was willing to teach me more and more and more. Plus I was so I'd go to every practice that they would let me go to. And he was at a lot of those, especially like regional practices and melee practices. He was everywhere. And so I kind of latched onto him just because he was the most dominant fighter around. Well, after a couple years of me just hanging on his coattails, we went to Golf War. And he pretty much told me that this is where right before Golf War is when he put me on the quest. That winter, he told me that the quest will basically help me understand what a knight is, what the squire relationship is, because a lot of knights were talking to me about squiring when I wasn't ready. And but yeah, he put me on this epic quest to learn about it all, because he doesn't believe in like knights picking up squires who aren't ready and ruining their career, because it happens a lot. Like knights that either don't play anymore or whatever still take squires, and it hurts the game in his mind. So he wanted to keep me away from people like that by giving me this quest. And then the quest really did help me, and it changed everything about what I understood about this game. I got to see behind the curtain, I guess, and learn about the virtues and all the kingdom anthropology, because most of the knights on my quest were out of kingdom. I'd say the majority. I did 60 knights, I think, during my quest, and most were out of kingdom.
What were the components of your quest?
So I had 10 questions he provided me and 1 question I created, and I had to ask any knight I fought. I had to ask them 5 of those 10 questions. Some of the questions revolved around what the squire expects of a knight, what the knight expects of the squire, what's the knight's favorite virtue and why, how does the squire feel about consorts? I mean, there was lots of questions just trying to understand the relationship. And the quest itself, like if I picked a knight, I would try to ask him questions that I either hadn't got before or that were more pertinent to that knight's attitude or something I needed in the quest, like especially skills I was lacking. I asked a lot of questions on the stuff that I was terrible at. But once I wrote all the answers down, I had this book that I could kind of study, that I could hand me down to my squires and things like that. But Owen's house ended up burning down, and it was lost in the process.
Oh no!
Yeah, it was a bad day.
So did that help you formulate your views on the knight squire relationship and fealty and that kind of thing?
Everything. It really. By the time I finished the quest, I thought, that's a key word, I thought, I knew what I was talking about and I understood the game. It wasn't until after I was knighted that I actually figured out what a knight was. But I really did thought I understood my views on fealty and the knight squire relationship and what I expected of my squires and all that. And then when I actually got knighted, it kind of sealed some of those and then drastically changed others.
So can you talk about that a little bit, like what your view of knighthood was before you got knighted and then how it changed after you got knighted?
Yeah, so before I got knighted, I thought everything was a show. Like it's a game, it's a show, you're playing a part, you know what I mean? And then with fealty meant a lot to me. So that part I took a little more seriously and that hasn't changed. But as far as what changed a lot, I feel there's a lot of people who take this game like it's their life. They take it extremely seriously. And things that have nothing to do with knighthood, they would come to you with their problems because you're a knight. They respect you as a peer. They see you as someone who can help them. So they'd come to you with problems that have absolutely nothing to do with the SCA or your path or anything and expect help. And so it really dawned on me, that part of the game, that it's more than just a show to some people. It's more than just a stick fighting game. It's a life. It's so much more. And I didn't understand any of that until I got knighted. I was real not in the know.
And I bet that, is magnified when you're king, right?
Yes. Like the first reign, because this is our third, but the first reign was chaos. We had no idea what was going on. Like we had so many people that were kind enough to help us and make sure that the kingdom actually was a kingdom when we were done. But we had no idea. And it is extremely magnified. People treat the crown absolutely different than they treat you when you're not, and in good and bad ways. And so it was definitely another eye-opening experience being crowned.
Okay. And how did you don't fight for your wife? How did you choose your consort?
So my beautiful wife just started playing the game seriously like a little over a year ago. She's played very sparsely and not at all at early years, but very sparsely in the last handful of years. And so when I started getting pretty serious about fighting, I needed a consort for crown. My very first consort was Lady Abdelaide Abdui, and she was just a younger lady in the northern region. And I asked her kind of on a whim, and we fought in crown, and I did a little better than I should have, and it kind of scared her, so I didn't get a fight for her no more. And so she was really nice. I love her to death, but that wasn't her path. And then, yeah, well, then Margarita has her husband, Sir Vincente now, has been a friend of mine for years, a couple years at this point. Well, she, knowing my wife, asked if I would fight for her. We had no intent to win at this point, but I was doing well. But if I was going to fight in crown, I needed a consort who knew what they were doing just in case I accidentally won. And she knew more about this game than I did by a lot. And so, but my wife was very comfortable with her. Like she was, yeah. And so since I was spending a lot of time with her, it was important that my wife was very okay with who I was hanging out with. And so she just made this contract that if I fought for her, she would make my clothes. And that was it. No intent to win crown or nothing yet. She would make me crown tunics, coronation tunics, and then my basic fighting tunics. Once we started doing that, because it was way before I was a knight that I started fighting in crown, that's when I went from looking like a hobo to a normal fighter in the game. Like it upscaled my looks by like 1,000%, and people started taking me serious when I didn't look like a trash panda. And so it was it was pretty good. And so that's how our relationship started. And then I fought for her ever since, and we've done a bunch of crowns.
And so you started fighting for her before you got knighted, right?
Oh yeah, like Owen, a good friend of mine, he told me a long time ago when I was just starting getting good at fighting that I should enter tournaments. And I entered a very small tournament in Amarillo, Texas. It was a Adler's Rue Lady of the Lake tournament. And I ended up winning. There was one knight, one centurion, and me and a handful of other like squire level fighters. And I ended up winning that tournament. Well, when I got home, Owen told me to keep riding the wave. You're doing good. Don't stop. So then I started winning more and more and more tournaments, and even bigger tournaments in our kingdom. The problem is with our championships, they come with responsibilities. You get hand-me-down clothes. You're supposed to stand in court. You take care of the B&B. I like to teach their fighters. And when I had 4 championships, I couldn't do any of them well. Right. And so it actually was a bad impression on me that I was giving off, because I wasn't doing the job very well. But I wasn't getting that advice yet. Owen was just saying, you're doing good, keep going. And so I entered Crown, and I started entering Crown way before I was ready to win it, to try to make a name for myself. And in retrospect, I probably should have waited a little bit, but.
Well, we have a culture up here where everybody enters Crown. So you'll
love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Like watching the West Kingdom, even the West Kingdom crowns where other crowns are flying in to fight in their tournament while they're, that's crazy to me. I wish.
Yeah. So that doesn't sound weird to me, because, oftentimes we'll have 100 people in our crown list.
We do not.
No. But you have people in your crown list that are engaged and ready to reign.
Yes. I would say half the list is ready to win, ready to run Crown or run the kingdom if they win. They're all supposed to be, but a lot of squires are still entering to try to level up.
Yeah, and the only way you learn how to fight Crown is to fight Crown.
Yeah.
So yeah. So you talked a little bit about how you would find every fight practice you could, and you'd fight all you could. What else were you doing to train before you got knighted?
Oh, so before I got knighted, it was lots of people in our kingdom, and probably in the SCA, they get stuck with one theory, style, teacher, footwork, whatever, and they try to master that skill. So in our kingdom, either whether it's Duke Drake or Duke Lachlan or Duke Spin or any of these super high level fighters, they train their style to mastery, absolute mastery. Well, I decided that was not my path at all. And so I would go to every single fighter that I could get to in a day's travel. Every practice I could go to, every event I could go to. I'd go to 3 events a month minimum when I was squire. And I would learn from anyone willing to teach me anything and try to add it into my repertoire, even if I'm I'd practice new things in the middle of a tournament like an idiot. But by doing that, that was how I trained. I didn't do Pell work until later years. It wasn't part of really taught here. When I was a grant level fighter and working on my knighthood is when we started my Pell class that I run here in the north. But used to run, stupid pandemic. But yeah, we I really, all I did was travel and listen to anyone willing to teach, and then fight. I was trying to be the first one on the field and last one off the field everywhere I went. Practice, pickup fights, tournaments. I just every war I'd be on the pickup field at 9 o'clock in the morning and leave at 6 o'clock at night every day. It's religious.
Did you keep a fighting journal? I know you wrote down your quest, but did you do other journaling?
I did on everything but the fighting. So on the fighting part, it was all I learned by doing. Okay. If I watch a YouTube video, I have to go outside and do it, hit the Pell or practice the footwork or something like that. I can't learn by, I don't know, it's just somebody telling me. It doesn't do anything for me. And so I didn't keep a journal on the fighting part. I kept a journal on everything else because I have a memory disorder. I was hurt real bad when I was younger, and I don't retain memory well, and so I have to really, really repetitious get it in my brain, and then have a reason to remember it. And so I just go fight and fight and fight and fight until I physically can't, And then if somebody was actually willing to work with me, whatever they were working with me on might stick. And then I'd do that over and over and over until it's ingrained.
Interesting. Did you do any out of kingdom traveling besides golf boards?
Mostly just Callantyre, Glenaubin, very few events in Glenaubin. But Callantyre, I try to go to 1, maybe 2 events a year every year. And then other than that, just Pinsick and Golf 4. I've between those two, I'd get a lot of exposure out of Kingdom, but not enough. Like I wish I could do the big tournament circuit real bad, but since I've been ready to and could afford it, because you grow up life or whatever, since 2016, I've been either Crown or King's Champion or Prince. So it's been hard traveling.
Okay, so your path to knighthood was relatively quick. Was your knighting a surprise?
So I don't know how y'all circles are, but in our knight circles here, if my knight was given feedback, he would tell me to work on something, whatever feedback it was. And towards the end, I wasn't getting feedback. They were like, just quit eating mashed potatoes with your fingers and you're pretty much good. And so once I stopped getting feedback, I knew I was pretty close. And then after a crown tournament, which I did really, really well in, one of the knights came off the field, Sir Ishval, and he gave me a chain. And he goes, just when you're finally getting knighted, just promise me you'll wear this chain or whatever, or use this chain. And that was a pretty good indicator that I was getting close. But yeah, it wasn't much. It wasn't a super big surprise because of those kind of tales.
Did you take a vigil?
I did. I sat vigil all night, which was a terrible plan for fighting the next day. But I sat vigil, and I tried to do a very interesting vigil. So my family's Methodist in real life, and I play a Viking persona in the SCA. And so I did a bunch of research, and a lot of the Nordic personalities were converted to Christianity at different periods in time. And so especially where I based my persona from in the Isles of Man, a lot of them were converted to Christianity, at least in title, to try to, so the church can spread and get lands and whatnot. Well, at my vigil, I had my priest from my actual church come to the SCA. I had a bathing ceremony where they took off my Viking clothes and put on whites and then washed me. And then he converted me to Christianity with a big speech and stuff in my vigil and prayed with me and stuff. And then I sat vigil all night until all my friends were drunk. And then we had, I don't know, probably 20 grand of alcohol out there, thanks to one of my squires, Jacob. I just got the whole camp drunk. And then the next day, I was knighted first thing in the morning, and then got beat up real bad at my home tournament. That's good times.
Did you use the chain Ismail gave you?
I had a couple chains. So I have a real thin chain that I ended up giving one of my squires for one day he gets knighted because he did really epic at an event. And then Ishval's chain is it's a real big heavy chain, and I got knighted with that one also. And I wear it like usually after fighting. I'll put it on after fighting. I wore it for fighting for a number of years, but it tore all my clothes to pieces. My queen got mad at me, and so now I wear it when I'm not fighting.
Yeah, I don't wear a chain when I'm fighting. It doesn't work.
Oh, I super do. But now I wear aluminum chains because they don't ruin my clothes and they break if they get pulled on.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Totally good idea. Have you ever had or struggled with tourney head or anything like that?
Only in Crown. And so I started doing really well in tournaments. I'd like me or Sven or this guy up here, Soren the Traveler, would win all the tournaments. Duke Lachlan would win all the tournaments. Like one of us would win.
Right.
And then so I thought that I was fine. Well, then I'd enter Crown and I'd do great until I got to the finals. And then like I'd start worrying about what ifs and all that stuff. And then I'd get my head real bad and I'd make silly mistakes in the finals. Like my first Crown I got second place in, Duke Sven just kind of touched me in the eyeball with like the finishing blow as he jumped. It's super dumb. And he stole that shot like 30 times during the fight, and I'm fine. And then he murdered me with it. And so, so many times I got second place, I don't know, 5 times total so far or something. And each time, like, I'd get all worried about something or worried about winning, or I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm almost there. And then I'd just get killed, and usually killed pretty epically.
So how did you
Sorry,
get yourself over that?
Oh, well, so I have, and this is going to be a kind of off tangent story.
Cool.
And we have this event demo called Mid-Fair, and it's the Norman Medieval Fair, and it's one of the nation's largest medieval fairs. There's about 300,000 people in 3 days. It's massive. And so in that fair, there's 3 days of fighting for us, and every 2 hours, or we have a 2-hour gap and then a 2-hour bear pit, and then a 2-hour gap and a 2-hour bear pit for 3 days. It's all the fighting anyone could possibly have. Well, my first year, everybody did, like, if you walked onto the field, you'd pick up a rose or whatever, like largesse we have at the time, and we'd go and give it to a random crowd person, sometimes a little girl, sometimes a lady, sometimes some guy or whatever, and you'd ask them if you could fight for them, for their honor. And then you'd go fight and kill as many people as you can before you got knocked out, and then you'd go talk to the person afterwards and recruit the people and stuff like that.
Right.
Well, my second year I go out as a bad guy under Owen's advice, because no one plays a bad guy, like, ever. And so I play a bad guy. I play Evil Jason originally, and it was epic. Like, I have all these fans cheering for me, murdering heroes, and being this bad guy. I would talk trash to the crowd. Like, I'd go over and put my arm around some, like, lady in the crowd, and her boyfriend's right there, and I'd tell her that if she would like, I'll kill him and she could go with me, just total bad guy.
Yeah.
Well, when I played the bad guy at Mid-Fair, there was nothing on the line. Like, there was no attitude problems. Like, I didn't care if I won or lost. It was just violence. And I violently destroyed my opponents nonstop. So in the last handful of crown tournaments, because I'd gotten, up until I won, I'd gotten second place 3 times in a row or something. It was terrible. Well, my queen, she comes up to me in the semifinals, and she tells me, basically, be the bad guy from Mid-Fair, which I renamed him thanks to a friend of mine, Kjarn. His current name is Viceroy Deacon Baklava Horse Johnson III. That's my evil persona. And well, she comes up to me and she's like, be Baklava, because it gets me out of my head. I'm a lot more ready to kill, more violent or whatever. And it kind of just gets me out of that mindset. Well, that helped a lot. Well, now it's just more like, she'll tell me, just go kill them. Don't fight them. You just go kill them. And it helps a lot with my mindset, because when I'm thinking about it, when I'm worried about it, because most of the guys you fight in the finals, they're absolutely able to take me out at any point. They're really good fighters.
Really good fighters.
And so I worry about it a lot.
Okay. That's really cool way to relax yourself. Put on the persona. Yeah. So did you win your first Crown Sword and Shield?
I won all my Crown Sword and Shield.
Okay.
It's just never the same swords and shields.
Okay.
I don't believe in a specific footwork or gear or style or range or any of that. So sometimes it was a gift someone made me I'd fight with, which Sir Nikolai now made me a couple shields, and I fought with those. I have a plastic shield that my wife and daughters put handprints on. I fought with those. I fought with teardrops and big shields and just anything. But yeah, it's all sword and shield. It's always different.
Do you have a favorite shield shape or strap?
Anything with at least 2 corners and a center punch. That's it. And it's not for effectiveness, because I think different styles, your shield being strapped or not strapped, changes how effective it is. I think center punches are so much fun. Like, it's absolute, like, I don't know, it's just a blast to me. And so I could use a little bitty center punch and have more fun than using like a decent heater shield, even though I might do better with a heater.
Okay. So go ahead.
I was about to say, I just super love it. Love it.
Oh, okay. So Mineko wants me to ask you about how you change your styles of fighting and you use your reigns as training opportunities to learn something new. Like, what's the impetus about that? And if you could just sort of let us tell
Sure.
the story.
So like I've went through a bunch of different theories, from Duke Laughlin's theory of stay at C range, pick on the face, control their weapon before you close. Ron Valder's theory on keeping the cone, what his range of measure is, basically the second you're in reach of your opponent's weapon or they're in reach of yours with one motion, that's kind of the measure. And so I'd live in that C range and let them miss or make a mistake before I'd really commit. Or so much of my northern brethren, I would just close. And like for a long time, I just see how fast I can get to A range to just throw as many shots as possible. And I've worked them all. But when I practice like I practice a fighter or a fighting theory. So when I'm training Ron Balder's theory, I do everything in my power to stay at a edge of measure, like right at the edge of measure. So if they commit to anything, I can move and strike, or if they pause, I can move in and strike. But I try to ride that edge of measure line when I'm practicing, like, I don't know, the Duke Sven's horrible Florentine style. I try to make sure that anytime I close, my left hand's in direct range and my right hand's able to control, but I want to stay in that perfect range. And so no matter what style I'm practicing, I try to emulate that fighter's range to a T, because like you have to be good at every range, because eventually a fighter's going to get in the range you don't want them in, and you have to be able to do something about it. Well, when I met Miko, I was working on C range and trying to make my opponent do what I want them to do before I killed them. And so my persona, my device is a snake, and she had snakes on her helmet. And like at the time, I was relating it to snake charming. Like I would lean in. If they leaned back, it was what I wanted. If I leaned back and they followed me, it's what I wanted. If I shifted which foot is forward, or shifted my sword or shield back, if my opponent reacted to it, it gave me opportunities, and I abused it for a number of years, especially with thrusting. And but that's what I think she was referring to originally. I was practicing that control of my opponent, trying to get them to react to something that didn't exist and capitalizing on it.
Well, I mean, one of the things that she thought was really cool is that you would take the opportunity while you were reigning to train something new, and you sort of put your ego aside.
I don't mind getting beat up. Actually, my favorite thing, if I'm practicing something and someone's besting me at it, there's a reason, and I can learn from that every time. And I've never learned anything from winning. I've learned a lot from getting whippings. And sometimes, like, I entered a crown tournament, never had been used a round shield before, and I entered with a 20-inch round shield just to try it. And I learned a tremendous amount. And then I'd pick up fights with the rest of the day. And it was a plastic trash can lid. I know, I put duct tape on it and everything. It was so bad. I got yelled at a lot, but it taught me a bunch. And so, but while I'm after I win crown, I usually change to a different style for a number of months or whatever to try to learn something else. Or if I get second place in crown and I thought the style was trash, I may switch to something else to try again. But if I thought it was doing really well and I actually liked it, I may try it for another handful of months. But I love getting beat up, especially when it's like when it's something I'm learning something new and I get punished. Instantly, that's something I can work with. That's knowledge.
So if you're constantly working on like different techniques, you know, like Sven's horribly dominant two-stick style, how do you decide which one you're going to carry through on a fight? Like, how do you decide what you're the best at for crown that you want to win? Or
it's whatever I'm working on at the time that I fight in crown normally.
Okay.
Last crown, I didn't have any intent on winning, so I entered with a plastic ice cream cone shield, and then I didn't bring heralds, or I like to bring a lot of heralds, and I like to be heralded into every round and big banners and all that stuff. I brought none of that, so we didn't plan on this crown. But yeah, I showed up with a plastic ice cream shield and a pulped sword, and then after I got into the third round, I had to go get a sword that worked because I was fighting real mean fighters. They were going to kill me. I didn't know I was going to stay in the tournament at that point. I thought I was leaving. And so, yeah, it was but no, when I enter a crown, it's usually I'm fighting the style that I've been training. And if I'm fighting to win against certain fighters, sometimes I use, I don't know, a bunch of different footworks, range controls. I'll change what stance I'm in the whole time while I'm fighting, because it doesn't give them a time to set up for for me. When I add a lot of chaos to a fight, a lot of times my opponent doesn't know, because they don't know what I'm going to do. They have a hard time setting up for it.
Okay. So go ahead.
So my primary fighting style that I fight with now is I take a different weapon from all the tools I've learned throughout the years, like all my different footworks, ranges, stances, how tall I fight or short I fight or what range I fight at, and I try to use all of it during a fight. Like I throw so much at my opponent that they can't get comfortable.
Okay.
And it only is bad against really, really, really comfortable fighters. Like if you're fighting Sven or Lachlan or like if you're gonna fight Bronos or Wanderers or one of those guys, they're so comfortable in their game that they're not worried about all the bullshit I'm doing. And at that point, usually my style falls apart. But until then, I'll be good.
What I was gonna ask is, I think trying a whole bunch of different styles is super cool. But I'm wondering if you're trying to like figure out what you like best and sort of make your own, or it's just fun for you.
Yeah, it's fun. The only thing that I would say I'm proficient at, that I do well, is I can judge measure really well. Whether it's no matter what weapon or style we're using in the SCA, if I'm fighting a glaive or a spear, I know the extent of their reach. Whether they're 10 foot tall or 5 foot tall, my brain does measure really well. And footwork, I do fairly well as far as getting in and out of range. Duke Drake calls it suddenness. Like my opponent thinks I'm at rest, and then all of a sudden I'm hitting them, and they're not prepared for it. That suddenness I do well. But the actual striking, the targeting and stuff like that, I could definitely be better at. The individual weapon styles, I could definitely be better at. And I don't think I'll ever master them because I'm not trying.
Right.
But I do try to master footwork, range, and measure, because I could pick up a dagger, and if I'm behind you when I hit you, I'm going to win. I mean,
So I know that you've brought a lot of your martial arts background into your fight with the range part. How do you teach what you're good at, like the range part and the suddenness?
So the suddenness we attribute to I train fencing for my springing forward and backwards in and out of combat. It's all from fencing. And so we have a lot of really good fencers in Ansteorra. And so I can point people to certain fencers and be like, just go learn fencing footwork for getting in and out of range. The suddenness for the shots are all in my hand. We do the pinky pull theory, where you're holding your sword with your first fingers and you pull your pinky to open your hand. And all of my speed and power comes from that technique, and everything else just positioning. And so when it comes to other footwork styles, I point them to the masters. If I can teach people Bronos's theory on footworks or Ronvalders, and I do in my backyard, but every time I lead with, this is their video of them teaching this exact same thing. And, I send them that direction. And then I said, if they have questions or stuff that I can't answer, refer to the video or message them. But because I don't have a set footwork, I refer them to the masters. If I want them to learn like Sven's stutter step, I'll send them. I'll say go to Sven's practice and get beat up for an hour, and you'll figure it out. Or Duke Lachlan, or like Bronos from Monteval's videos, or Duke Sean's theory of attacking for defense. I mean, you'd learn it better from a master than you could from me. But I'm willing to be their pal when they're learning.
Okay. I think it's interesting that you don't think you've conglomerated it into your own style.
I wish I could take credit for something like that, but I don't know. It's to me, it's just a million different tricks that I like to throw at people. And I don't know, if I fight Sven for 6 months straight, he'll know everything I can do. But if I train something new, I may have something that might get through on him at least once in a tournament, and then in pickup fights, he'll beat the life out of me for doing it. But
I've been on the other end of that, yeah. So let's talk reining a little bit. What was the most surprising thing about your first reign?
I would say it was my absolute lack of knowledge of kingdom tradition and how I messed that up. So in Ansteorra, tradition is more important than law, like 80% of the time. And there is a lot of traditions. And since when I traveled everywhere, it's for fighting. So I didn't get to know all of their traditions and their ways and their their things. And so as Crown, you get to see a lot of that, and people get a little upset when you mess it up, and or they're way into making sure you know it beforehand, before like courts or different things. And so the surprising part was how much tradition we actually have and how in depth it is. It's deep in Ansteorra.
So it's not written down somewhere. You guys don't have like sumptuary laws or like sort of.
I read Kapora because I have to, and whatnot, but I don't read unless I absolutely have to. So maybe it's probably somewhere.
It might be. I don't know. Okay.
My books read themselves to me. They made this books on tape thing years ago, and that's my reading now.
Well, that's what I do too, because I read for work. So any pleasure reading is audible.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, how did you just learn the traditions as you went, or did your queen know them, or?
So my wonderful queen, Duchess Margarita, is so much better at all that than I will ever be, because she does have a memory. She does read, which is weird. And then, but yeah, because of, like, she is my other half. I'm really good at the improv speeches and being flashy during court and fighting and all that stuff. She's an awesome archer fighter, also, by the way. But she is epic at everything else, at the like court prep and understanding traditions and learning all that stuff. She's amazing. So she makes me look like I'm not terrible. It's fantastic.
Okay. Well, what's your favorite part of reigning?
So it's the light in people's eyes when you're giving them awards and recognize them for stuff is definitely one of my favorite parts. My other favorite part is it's like watching a movie where the king is leading their troops onto the field. Like, that was so awesome. And I've only done it a handful of times, like where you actually lead the entire army onto the field, but when we're all singing the same song and drums are playing and that all comes together, like just being the head of that. Oh, it's the greatest feeling. I don't know. I can't even describe it. It's so good. Is
that like something that happens at Gulf Wars for you guys?
Yes. So all of our major battles, like the field battle, castle battles, things like that, we all meet at the Ansteorran Towers at Gulf War, which have these two big towers set up. We all meet there, and then we muster, and then somebody does like battle hymns or drums or different things as we all the way march to the field, and then we all take the field as a army. Mid-Realm, Glenaubin, Trimaris, Ansteorra, all of us have our own little battle musters and armies and stuff.
Oh, that's cool.
Pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Seeing a whole field of black and yellow, or Glenaubin's red and black, or Calantir's purple, all march into the field together singing. It's pretty cool.
Have you created any traditions?
So my queen, she has.
Okay.
So no, I just add chaos as often as possible. But as far as real traditions, my wonderful queen decided our first reign that minis, like mini alcohol bottles, airplane, hotel bottles, don't count. And so, and she's edicted it into court on multiple occasions. And so often you'll catch her giving them out, like, I don't know, like she's just tossing flowers down an aisle, just throwing minis at people, or giving people minis, or drinking them in court or whatever, because minis don't count.
It's like trick or treating in Ansteorra court.
It is. I like my alcohols, and when I'm around her, you're never without it.
All right. Well, that's good to know. I mean, boozy adult trick or treating. So
yeah, we've instituted a number of awards and changed awards and changed how different things are structured in our kingdom as far as tradition and stuff. But that's really the only tradition she created. His minis don't count.
That's cool. Do you feel that now that you're a duke, that your role has changed from just being a knight? And
yeah,
if so, how?
I think it's just an inspirational point. People view the royal family different, but in Ansteorra, like, we still, even if you're royal family, you're not really a circle. Like, the knights are a circle, the Pelican, Laurels, Mods, etc. But the royals aren't really a circle, so it's not like a family or anything. So we don't have that some kingdoms have. But I would say just the inspirational point. So when people see Duke or Duchess, they react differently to it, especially up and coming fighters or artisans or whatnot. they really react different than people who've already been to the top and seen behind the screen. And so I would say that that's the only real big part that's changed, is how people view you and react to you, what they expect of you.
So on the pickup field, besides a person's prowess, what would stand out to you if you fought an unbelt? Like what would be your advice to somebody for them to stand out?
So what I like to see with unbelts, besides their prowess, because there's a lot, I see prowess different than some people, I guess, but there's a lot to unpack there. What I like to see is if they hit someone and it's not good and the person calls it, I like to see where they would say, no, don't take that because of X, Y, Z. I like to see the honor and chivalry part of fighting a lot. Also, teaching. So if I'm fighting an unbelt, would I tell anyone I fight? If first I ask if I'm allowed to give them advice, and then if they see something, would they please give me advice? Because I'm willing to learn from everybody forever. But when I'm fighting an unbelt, if they see something and they're willing to tell me about it or talk about it, that's like a big deal for me. Like, because a lot of them are all whatever Jason says goes because he's a Duke or whatever. That's not real. That's not true. And so when they're willing to see something and point it out that this is wrong and why, I think that's pretty epic. Or like I like watching unbelts with other people. When I'm watching unbelts fight other fighters and they're courteous when they tell them, if they hit them wrong, don't take a shot, or if they get hit and they call well, I like that a lot. I really like people calling well.
Yeah, me too. So let's unpack the prowess thing then.
Oh, Lord.
Tell me what your view of prowess is and why you think it needs unpacking.
Success, like a lot of people find success with whatever they're doing in fighting. But I view prowess as an understanding of the combat itself. So understanding body mechanics, understanding range, understanding control of your opponent's weapons and shields, which come to find out a lot of people don't actually physically manipulate people's weapons and shields, which I do a lot. And then understanding the environment, using the environment to your advantage, using the list field to your advantage. All these things are part of prowess, like the understanding of the fight in a whole. There's a lot of people who can beat somebody up, but a lot of those people, like especially when I was coming up, I was trying to train with people and they didn't understand why what they were doing worked or how the body actually worked or whatever. And so I've always been real big into anatomy and physiology and motion and control and center of gravity and all that stuff. And so I always add that into my fights. And so when seeing someone who actually understands what they're doing or want to learn the actual mechanics of what they're doing, I think that's awesome. That's a big part of prowess for me. And of course there's miles that goes with that. Like every master fighter has their own theory on the fight and body mechanics, but
I think when it's not always about winning, it's about the understanding and the execution of the technique. And I think sometimes because we're such a winner takes all society, that's your word fame is sort of about what you win and where.
Yes.
I think sometimes we miss that. But I like that, there's other people out there that see it the same way. So that's good.
I've been watching that Coach's Corner thing, and those guys, like most of the guys on there, have a real good understanding of the why, and I like that a lot.
Yeah, me too. That's my favorite thing. I wait all week for that, and then I put it on and I walk my dog. So I love the Coach's Corner. It's awesome. How cool is it to just like be a fly on the wall of like listening to Brandos and Ragnvalder and Tristan and Sean talk.
So awesome.
I know, right? Like, yeah. So like more, please.
Yeah, when I was real bad in my head, you asked me the headspace question earlier. When I was real bad in that, I was talking to Duke Sean and he sent me a paper of kind of the fighter mind he has. And it was basically his thoughts on the fighter mind and engagement and things. And it was like, listen to how he thought about it, because I still don't think that way. But how he thought about it really helped me understand what I was looking for, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like some of these guys have a real good understanding of that stuff.
Did he send you his Sanctity of the Field thing?
He sent me a couple pages on Facebook Messenger. I don't know exactly what they were. I put them in the background. They're awesome. Like I still use them for my squires.
Yeah, I collect that stuff. So I have a notebook that's like this big. But yeah, I do the same thing. And what's cool about the Coach's Corner, I know we're getting off on a tangent, is that you can hear the same thing from like 4 different people, and they'll all explain it different. And one of them's going to resonate with somebody when the other 3 don't.
Yeah, I have that problem teaching. So I can teach something to somebody, but they understand a different vocabulary than I'm capable of speaking. So sometimes I have to teach the same thing 400 times with different language until it clicks with them, because I'm their only teacher at the time. And so I have to go through like, okay, well, maybe we'll try it this way. And then, so if I'm teaching somebody a flat snap, I try to teach the serving the soup or the pizza, or eventually I end with, okay, can you throw a baseball? And then we, or whatever language it takes to get it across. But sometimes I just don't have the right vocabulary for that person, and other coaches do. So
yeah,
it's cool to see.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me about the third reign. You weren't going after it, but you had a good day?
Nope. So I wasn't going after it. I didn't have any intent. My intent was to dukel out after the second round. And it didn't matter who I fought in the first or second. If I won, awesome. If I lost, awesome. But I was going to use my ducal privileges after the second round. Well, my wonderful queen has almost asked nothing of me, like, except for, I don't know, tell me not to do certain things, like quit being a hobo or whatever. But she hasn't asked a lot of me. Well, after that, the fighters she wanted to win had already been knocked out of crown. And so she told me, she's like, Jason, go win. And I was like, no, what? we didn't discuss this. And so she took me off to the side, and she's like, I really want you to go win for me. And I was not prepared. And she said she would help make everything work, because I was in the middle of buying a house, and I just bought a car, and like it wasn't the time.
Right.
But she's like, I will work hard to make sure this can happen. And I was like, well, she's never asked a lot of me. And so I was like, you know what, I'll do this for you. And then we called my wife and told her, because she had no idea. Super bad.
Right.
Yeah. It was a day of like the last 2 fighters I fought, Sir Ragnar and Count Kreppen. On any day, they could both beat the crap out of me. And so it was like, I didn't expect to win, even when I wanted to win, because I didn't train for it. I didn't have my equipment. And then like in the fight in Ragnar, he hit me in the same butt cheek like 3 different times throughout the fight, like real bad. He killed me the first round. I got in the second round after he had just tore my leg off. And then in the third round, he hit me light in the leg. And then he didn't let me take it. And then I finally got him with a thrust. But like, he absolutely could have killed me at any point. He's probably, in my opinion, one of the better fighters in the whole SCA.
He's one of Sven's guys, right?
He's one of Sven's former squires, Sir Ragnar. In my humble opinion, I think when he's in training and actually working, a better fighter than Sven. He's actually faster and stronger for sure.
Wow.
And then like I've seen him, when I see him fight fighters around the world, it's like he just murders everyone. Mm-hmm. It's terrifying to watch. He's crazy good. Sven's more patient. I think it has a slightly better defense, but I think Ragnar's offense is by far better.
Interesting. So for the people that aren't from Ansteorra and maybe haven't seen one of these before, can you explain the tradition of dukeling out? Because that is not something we do over here.
So within the rules, anyone can quit any tournament anytime. That's in the SCA rules. You can't make someone fight. But in Ansteorra, the tradition is you enter crown if you're want to win or ready to win. And so for a while, I guess a long time ago, the crown's list needed fighters, and they needed whoever won to earn it. And so if people didn't want to win crown, the dukes that have won a bunch of times, they created this tradition that they could enter crown tournament. And I don't know which king instituted it or queen, but they would enter crown tournament. And then when they found someone they felt was worthy, they would dukel out to them or exercise their ducal privilege and leave. And then over years, it became a tradition. And so now, anytime a duke wants to leave crown, if they're fighting someone they think's worthy to win, or like one of their squires or their friend or their consort, or for whatever reason they decide they want to leave crown, they say, Your Majesties, I Duke whatever find this person acceptable. I would like to bow at a crown tournament for them. And so I've dukeled out to people. I've also duked out to consorts. If I didn't like the fighter so much, or if I like their consort a lot, sometimes I dukel to their consort.
That's cool. I like that. I like it because you're right. Like anybody can, one of the rules of the list is you can refuse a fight anytime and you can get out of the tournament. But I like that there's a statement made that, this person would make a great king, or his consort make a great queen. Or
on the other hand, though, a lot of dukes enter crown tournament to eliminate people they don't want to win. And so that plays a lot of politics in the Ansteorra, because they can enter, hope they draw the person, or I guess, I don't know, go like give a bunch of chocolates to the list mistress and really hope they draw them. But if they draw that person, they eliminate them, then they dukel out. And so for instance, I don't know, if Lachlan wanted to make sure I didn't win crown tournament, he could enter, hit me in the face a bunch, and then quit crown, and I wouldn't win or whatever.
And your crown tourneys are single elim?
So normally it's best 2 out of 3, single elimination. And the weapon styles almost always bring your best. I change that up as often as possible, and I usually get grief for doing so. But during my crowns, I try to add different weapon styles and mess with people and add best 3 of 5 in the finals or something, just to pick on the people that get stuck in their one style.
Interesting. Okay.
Once again, breaking tradition gets me yelled at. What I do.
Yeah, but as the king, you're allowed to do that. So yep. That's tradition too. So.
That's right. Still get grief for it though, I promise.
Yeah. I was just gonna ask you, because you came into the SCA and basically for a year, right? Like it was just fighting in the backyard.
Yeah.
How did you fall in love with the rest of it? Because it can seem weird. And
my wonderful knight and Jarl Owen were my 2 biggest factors. When Owen put me on the quest, I learned a lot about the SCA that wasn't just fighting. But I didn't fall in love with it until my knight would introduce me to certain people. And then when you see what someone else is passionate about, you're more willing to try whatever it is. So when someone was telling me about their passion about mead making, I was like, you know what? I'll try mead. And now, I am in love with mead, everything about it. I drink it as often as humanly possible. And so, but with whatever the passion is, so I can't memorize anything, but I love Bardic. Once I sat in my first impromptu Bardic circle, I was hooked from that second going forward. And so now, I made a tradition out of paying bards to herald me and trying to build up them and their careers, and then they I don't know, become heroes in Bardic and stuff. But whatever the thing is, whether it's cooking or fighting or singing or whatever, I've usually fell in love with it by someone else telling me how epic it was with their experience. And now I do everything. I love this game so much, everything about it.
That is one of the really cool things about the SCA, is how passionate people are and how excited they get when they tell you about the thing they love.
I do all kinds of arts. Or I'm sorry, I've done 1-offs or 2-offs on all kinds of arts because somebody else was willing to teach me their art. My friend Vinny, Sir Vincent, my queen's husband, he makes crossbows. And so he showed me how to make crossbows. And I made a couple crossbows since then with his help. And they turned out pretty awesome. And so, yeah,
all right.
His passion.
Did we not talk about something that you would like to talk about?
So just for, I don't know, all the people listening, the Knight Squire relationship part, I know we talked about it a little bit earlier, but I just want to make sure that my direct thoughts on it real quick.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who squire to the wrong person because they don't invest a lot of time learning that relationship, what the knight will expect of them, what they'll expect from the knight, what duties they're expected of, what the knight squire relationship actually is. So make sure that if you're going to choose a knight, really delve into that stuff. I suggest the quest. Get 10 questions that you need to know. Fight 25 or 40 or 60 knights or however many it is, ask them all those questions and record them. By the end of the quest, you should know exactly what you want out of a knight. The quest has been super big in the northern region of Ansteorra. We've got some other people like my current Kingdom Herald. I put him on a quest for the Laurel's Path a long time ago, and he did that quest and he learned a lot about it. And I mean, the idea of questing to figure out whether you're going to be a protege or a student or squire or whatever, to actually know exactly what you want, such a good idea.
Well, and oh, go ahead.
Oh, please, that was it.
Oh, I was just going to say, and the quest allows you to meet a whole bunch of different people that maybe you would never have gotten out of your comfort zone to meet. And maybe one of those people speaks your language, right?
And that's a big deal. I had no idea I wanted to squire to Morgan, like not even a little bit, until I completed the quest. So I thought I was going to squire to either Owen or Sir Ishvile or somebody else. I wanted to squire to Sir Vigan or Sir Daffod real bad when I started my quest, or Earl Daffod. And by the time I finished my quest, I picked a squire as my knight. So, I mean, you never know until you do it.
Right. And I think some people rush into squiring thinking that they have to hook up with someone right away. And that's totally not the case either.
Or the knight asks them and then they say yes. And that person doesn't know.
Right.
And that's where a lot of, in my mind, the problems come from. And I know different kingdoms traditions are different, but I think the squire should absolutely know what they're getting into, like understand it fully.
Right. Right. I agree 100%. I don't like it when people scoop people up too fast and they don't let them figure out what the SCA is and what they actually want to learn.
Yeah.
So I love the quest thing. I think that's awesome. All right. Well, let's look at your swords.
Okay. So, like I said, I changed swords nonstop. This is my current versions of my multiple swords. So one is in Ansteorra, and I don't know if everyone else does it or any other kingdoms do it. We cut our baskets, so our demis, our hand, does not hit it when we throw what we call a number one, which is where our wrist and hand bend. I hate it when that touches. Some people build their basket up right here, but I just cut the basket out, the plastic baskets, and then most of the time I wear a demi, which you should. And then, but this is, I start with a 36-inch sword, and then I put a thrusting tip on it. Every one of my swords have thrusting tips. Even if I don't use it, like if I'm not training thrusting, or if I refuse to thrust, I want it to be a threat to my opponent, because it should be. I don't use triggers of any kind. Triggers of the devil. I fight open-handed, and I want to feel the sword. I want my hand motion to make the sword do what I want it to do. I don't want to pull on a trigger to create an effect. And a lot of people do, and that works for them. It's awesome, cool, whatever. But I want to do everything with my hand. But my average sword is 36 inches with a thrusting tip, and I use it, I don't know, when I'm right now. I've done every length of sword and weight of sword. I also use a medium weight rattan or a light rattan. And then you'll notice the end is bigger than the rest of the sword. Thanks to Countess Torn, I've done rawhide before. But this is actually electrical heat shrink, industrial heat shrink. And it's only to keep the rattan. I break a sword every 3 weeks, and it keeps the rattan. Like I can make them last 5 weeks sometimes, which is awesome. Like these are all broken because I fought like 2 big practices recently.
Do you think that the shrink, it's like industrial shrink wrap, right? Do you think it works better?
So it's like the electrical heat shrink.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't weigh anything. So you put it on over the sword and then you heat it up and it pulls tight.
Okay.
But it doesn't weigh anything. And rawhide weighs a little more and it does the same thing, but it's harder to put on and costs money. And this I get from work. So I kind of cheat. This is my, what I call my sniping sword. So my other sword is for general engagement, and I use a 36 inches. I start off with a 38 and a half, and then I put a 1-inch thrusting tip, and it's quite a bit longer. It's the same weight of rattan, but I also added the tip protection just from breaking the sword. Now, something that I learned from Duke Sven is by adding the rawhide or the heat shrink or whatever, the turnover on wrap shots is faster, but the recovery is a hair slower. So if you want to beat the edge of the shield and turn over a decent wrap shot, the heat shrink or rawhide helps that speed. It also helps it hit a little harder, but it does nothing for recovery. So bad. And then the same 36-inch sword, but full rawhide. These are for pretty like tournaments and stuff. The theory is rawhide does not affect the flexibility of a sword because that's in the rules, but it super does, and they hit better, and I love it. It's so good. And
rawhide swords are a big thing up here.
Yeah, I noticed when Count Crepin came from Ansteorra, he used 2x4s with rawhide on them, big fat swords that like hurt people, and I was like, man, that's not even fun for people. But I noticed that it's not the weight of the sword that makes it hit hard. It's a planed sword flexes less. And the lack of flex, in my opinion, is what makes it hit better. And the rawhide may or may not take a little flex out of the sword, and so it hits a little better. The other thing is, I wanted to bring this one for handle description. I make my handles egg-shaped or oval, a little wider at the back and thinner on the front, but I want them rounded. And I do that because my fat little hands are shaped that way.
Right.
And so I want my sword to fit my hand when I'm using open grip so I can do the pinky pull.
Yep.
I use lanyards because I have to make it legal because triggers are terrible. Bam. And that's my sword in a nutshell. Oh, baskets. The only reason I use plastic baskets is because every basket I put on my swords breaks. Every stupid one of them. And so these are crazy cheap. And I could break them all, and I'm happy with it because if I don't cut them out, they replace them for free at Golf War, or did in the past at least. And then if I did break them, it's only $35 instead of if you wanted the little spring steel ones, they're even more to have the same. If you want a light basket, yeah. So we'll buy like 35 of these a year for everybody to purchase from our pool, and then if I break 7 of them, it's fine.
So the one that you just showed didn't have the carve out. Is there a reason for that? Like,
nope, laziness, and it's a sniping sword. So I don't fight at close range with this one. So I don't need to do as many deep angles. And so I'm basically sniping people's faces or using wrap shots, and none of those require the cutout. But if I wanted to be able to throw every shot I can throw, I probably should cut it out.
Okay.
Or build it up or something, because anytime your gear gets in the way of the shot you're capable of throwing, I think it's a problem. And these plastic baskets, unfortunately, they hit your hand when they're not cut out.
Yeah, I always rotate mine so that
I've seen people do that as well. But with a Demion, my fat hand touches the plastic basket anyways, like everywhere. Like I just touch all over it. And so for me to rotate, I'd have to rotate it till my whole back of my hand's probably exposed. And I really don't want to get hit there.
Yeah, that might be why I have bumps on the back of my hand. But anyway, we don't have to talk about that. All right, so let's do the final 10 then. What event have you never gone to that you would like to go to?
So you heard about Mid-Fair. So it has a bunch of big bear pits, 2-hour bear pits with 15 or more people, sometimes 30 people for 2 hours. And there's multiple of those every day. But I hear about this event called Burka, where there's like 400 people doing a bear pit. That is heaven to me. I want to go fight 400 people. Like our kingdom, the biggest tournament I've ever seen, has like 100 people in it. So like 400 people in a tournament, that is heaven. I want to go so bad. Now, besides that, Adult Swim and Sport of Kings, they kind of have this Adult Swim has the same kind of feel. Several hundred fighters hitting each other. And it's all pickups.
Yep.
I want all of that. And Sport of Kings are the 3 that I really want. But Burka, as an event, that's the one to go to. If you want to go to Adult Swim, like that's pickup fights and fighter practice, but a full event, Burka has all the merchants and all the event stuff, but it also has this crazy bear pit.
Yeah.
Oh, so much fun.
So just because I'm in charge of teachers for Sport of Kings next year, Sport of Kings also has a bear pit all day long. So if you don't want to take classes, you can bear pit all day long.
So I thought Sport of Kings was a bunch of classes and then a tournament.
Well, there is a bunch of classes in a tournament, but they also have the Field of Honor, where people fight all day. Like Duke will go out and hold the Field of Honor and fight with people. And then there's also 2 fighting fields that basically bear pit all day long.
That sounds amazing.
Yeah, so pickups all day long. Just throwing it out there.
We were gonna go this year for sure, and then everything fell apart. And then hopefully next year doesn't fall apart. But if not, because I have all the vacation in the universe now, I will super go to Sport of Kings.
Well, if you come, tell me, and we'll set you up to teach something.
You have to choose whatever you want me to teach. I'll teach. I'll make a class on it or something.
I think range.
Sweet business. Now, disclaimer: I stole all of my range from like one of three fighters, which was Duke Lachlan, Count Gemini, and Bronos and Ronvalder. I think they're the same human with one with a left arm, one a right arm, or something. But I stole all the range mechanics from them. So when I teach my classes on range mechanics, I credit them.
Well, all of them are super good teachers. I'm very good.
But my class is like mechanics from all three of their classes because I think they're necessary in a whole.
Cool. All right. If you could fight anyone in the world, who would it be?
So I have a heroes list, and some I have fought and some I haven't fought, and I don't think I can narrow it down. So some of the people on my list I would want to fight again for sure because I've grown a lot since we fought. But of course, Bronos, Ronvalder, Duke Sean. There's Cosmo Craven. He's the coolest dude. I love that guy.
He's hilarious.
There's a guy I didn't get a fight, or two guys I didn't get a fight that I was there at the events. But Duke Morgan from Aidenvelt, I believe it is. He was injured at Gulf War, and so he didn't get a fight. He was walking around a little cane thing, and then the other one was His Majesty. We were both crowns at Pinzik, and so we were super busy and didn't get a fight. And that was Brendan of the East, I think. Brendan, yeah, I want to fight him real bad. So I beat up one of his younger fighters that fight like him, and then I had a real good, like, very competitive fight with another knight that fought like him, but I didn't get to fight him. So,
all very, very good fights. What is your favorite? Why don't I say Gulf War story? What's your favorite Gulf War story?
So, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. When it's not on the field, crown or not, I'm generally always drunk at Gulf War. So, one of my favorites is this last time I was at Gulf War. I had a chance to drink with a bunch of my rapier fighting friends, and they were way into drinking with me the way I drink at events. And so we went from one camp to another, one building to another, the Green Dragon, or back to the castle, or back to the towers, drinking heavily. And individually, one at a time, we got to put all the rapier fighters to bed. And so that was that was a fun time. It's probably the funnest experience I've had with the Ansteorra and rapier community, if I'm being honest. Great people.
That's fun. All right.
And that's the one I can tell without getting in trouble.
Those are good stories. Who are your favorite people to watch fight?
So I like entertaining fighters, and I also like people with battle computers. So most of Bronos and Ronvalder's fights would be better if they didn't just own whoever they were fighting. Like, it's not a competition most of the time. But Bronos and Hans for the champions battle at Pinzik, where Hans ended up getting Bronos, that was a long, drawn-out, very good fight. And of course, Bronos has pretty epic champion battles too. But there's two fighters in the kingdom of Callantir right above us. And I don't know if you know much about Callantir, but they don't wear much armor. They're not a real hard-hitting kingdom, but they're a very skillful blade work kingdom. And in Callantir, you interviewed Xerxes. Xerxes is a really fun fighter to watch, and I've got to fight him a handful of times. He's super fun to fight. I envision him as me, but like in shape and better. And so he's a skinny, athletic guy, and he's what I could be if I like did sit-ups. But and then Lucian, their current majesty of Callantir, is also a very creative fighter. Footwork, range, athleticism, things like that. And so I like that really in and out, mobile, bouncy, sword shield footwork fighters. Cool. I don't like to stand still and hit each other fighters. It's boring to me.
Cool. I'm gonna have to look them up on YouTube.
So much fun.
Do you have a hero in the SDA, and if so, who is it?
Yes. Okay. So once again, not for fighting. My hero in the SCA is Earl Defeath Whitaker. He's the head of the Whitaker household and in Ansteorra, and he is what I consider an ideal knight. He's his honor, his joy in the game, his love, like his passions are massive, and people flock to him because of it. Like he loves this game and loves the fighting and the arts and the building of relationships, like and it shows in everything he does. He also, like, his understanding of like the courtly graces, and he was one of the people I interviewed on my quest, and the knowledges that he passed on to me is, I'll never forget it. Like his understanding of like of households and fealty and things that he explained to me really changed my path in this game, and he'll always be my hero. He's great. He also fought Taka in a couple of championship battles at Golf Wars. There's epic videos on that, glaive fights. But I love him for everything but fighting, but he is an awesome fighter too.
All right, cool. If you had to recommend one event in your kingdom for someone out of kingdom to go to, what would it be?
So if it's a melee event, there's two of them for vastly different reasons. And if it's a tournament, there's Warlord. So Steps Warlord is our highest prowess tournament, because all the people, like all the highest level fighters, can win it multiple times, and it's more of a prize tourney than anything else. And it also comes with a lot of respect. And so everyone enters Warlord, or lots of people enter Warlord, and then some people like Timo have won it a bunch of times. But it's a way awesome tournament for just prowess, for fighting. It's also double elimination, and then there's multiple brackets. So if you're a knight, you only get one bracket. If you're a centurion and you lose Warlord, you get to go to the centurion tournament. If you're a centurion and lose Warlord, you get to do the knights tournament, centurion tournament. If you're a Talon or AOA fighter, you get 3 tournaments. So all the blam. It's a great tournament. For melees, there's Border March Autumn Melees, which is our inter-kingdom war with Glenavon. And it's all the melee blam you could have for an actual event. And so if you want to go to a big melee event, Border March is the event. But my personal favorite, and I'm going to recommend this to the gnome world, you got to come to Moonshadow's Provincial Games. So it's a lot of games. It's melee style fighting, except for all the fighting is games, whether you're jugging or playing this whatever weird melee bowling games, whatever games they come up with. The thing that stands out about it is people don't necessarily follow the rules, and if you cheat well enough, they make a new rule for you. And so epic things happens, like people throwing choppas at each other from across the field, Brom, or people tackling each other over fences and shooting each other crossbows when you're not engaged, things like that. It's good times. And so they have this game called Unreal Tournament in Moonshadow Provincial Games, and there's 2 magical weapons, or 2 magical items. There's a shield that makes you invincible, so as long as you're carrying it, you don't have to take a shot. But as long as you're carrying it, people have no respect for your health, and so they just hit you on all of your body as often as possible. And then there's a spear that if you touch anyone anywhere, they die. And so if your team has that, it's a big controlling thing. If the spear hits the shield, the person holding the spear and the shield both die. So, and then of course there's a crossbowman in each corner that you can't hit, that shoot anyone they want, anywhere they want, anytime they want. So that gets real painful, real quick. And so it's Provincial Games. It's the most chaotic fun you can have in a melee all day for a good January event.
Cool. All right. That sounds like a lot of fun. All right. So what is your favorite medieval-esque or period movie?
Troy. I just watched it today. I've probably watched it 1,000 times. Like the idea of being a hero and your name living on, like that is, one day I'll be epic. And so I hope, if I don't get crippled before then, but I like that idea of being a hero. And we have so many heroes in the SCA, from like your Duke Shawns, your Duke Uthers, your Bronos and Ron Balders, you know what I mean? And I'll get good enough at fighting one day, travel enough that maybe one day people will remember me. So Troy's definitely my movie. Achilles is awesome. I actually I originally wanted to base my persona off Jason and the Argonauts. Jason, I do a lot of studying on him. And he lived in the time of heroes. And so I like that idea, the whole hero mentality.
That's cool. If you could change one thing about the SCA, what would it be?
So I think that punching someone in the face in armor, right? you shouldn't have to call it. It should totally be legal. Like, I don't see any reason why it's not. I mean, if I'm allowed to hit you with a glaive at full tilt from like when you're not even paying attention to me at war, but I can't jab you in the nose, there's something wrong. Got to fix our rules. We should be able to punch each other. Just
All
I'm
right.
passionate about it. Occasionally I do it. I always say I'm sorry, and I haven't got kicked off the field for it yet.
You mean like punch? Like
Yeah, just hit somebody. Yeah.
okay. All right.
Or kick them, or like me and Oliver the Faithful. When we fight melees tournaments, we don't always follow the rules, and sometimes there's a lot of that going on. So I love it. It's a lot of fun. It's all in good sport. If you scream A and S first, I think it counts. Like it makes it legal or something.
Okay.
Arts and sciences, yeah, something like that.
All right. What is your favorite in-kingdom tradition?
I would say we have this tradition that that started a handful of years ago, and I don't remember. I think Duchess Sonia started it, but the Lady of the Rose, like all the roses in our kingdom, throughout the day, and this doesn't happen at every event, but when it does happen, it's pretty awesome. If they see something truly inspirational at court that night, all the roses will line up, and they'll call that person forward, whatever cool thing they did, and they'll give them a token, and they'll tell the populace about it.
Oh,
And so you see people that are doing awesome services or beautiful arts or really giving to the game, have an epic death, in a list. People that stand out, the roses will tell the populace. So sometimes it makes people's entire event. When some guy gets recognized for something epic they did, or somebody does really good at water bearing or really saves their, something inspirational. And when the roses all stand there and call these people up and give them tokens, it's super meaningful. And so I think that's probably my favorite tradition to date.
I love that. What do you think is the most important trait to become a successful fighter?
So I would say willingness to be a student. So many people, like, they have excuses or yeah buts or I was just trying this instead of just listening. And so if I'm fighting you and you tell me something or teach me something, even if I know it won't help what I'm working on or add to my style or my arsenal, or my body physically can't do that because, like, Jarl Owen's this massive guy, or I'm not 7 feet tall, some things I just can't do. But if you teach me something, you're at least teaching me how you throw it, what you're capable of, and how you see the fight, which can give me an advantage when I'm fighting you. And so no matter who's talking to you or what they're talking to you about, I say learn from them. Don't dismiss them. Don't yeah but them. Don't say, but I was trying to work on this. Just hear them out. Being a student and willing to listen is, I think, by far the best thing to become an successful fighter.
Yeah, that's great advice. Well, thank you so much, Your Majesty. I really appreciate your time, and this has been super fun. So
thank you for all this.
Hopefully our paths will cross next year, and I'll actually get to fight.
Well, I've tried a few times. In the past, I've had squires that really wanted to learn from you, and I've sent them your way, or people I was teaching, and then of course your tunics and stuff. So I've had opportunities. I've been in Alaska and stuff, and I thought y'all shared events between y'all's areas, but not as much apparently.
We're really far away.
Yeah. So
it doesn't really look like it, but we really are.
Yeah, well, I hear a lot about y'all traveling like in West Kingdom events and things like that. So I was hoping that one day we'll cross paths, but
well, if Sean has his thing in April,
his backyard practice.
Yeah, I always go to that. Always.
My birthday's in April. I think that'd be a good present for me to make my wife pay for me a flight up there.
So
yeah.
All right. Thank you everyone for joining us. My sister and I are going to talk to Duke Valharic on Wednesday. He's a Laurel and a Duke and a really interesting guy. That'll be super fun. So thanks again, and see you later. Bye-bye.